friends, so I had to pass on the words that God gave to me the other day, and they may have done you wrong. Will you trust that I'm going to make it right? And of course, when he said those words, I was like, yes, God, you're going to make it right. They're going to get what they deserve. And then he brought to mind the story of Joseph. And if you don't know about the story of Joseph, he went through a lot at the hands of his brothers. His brothers were jealous of him, and they ended up throwing him in a pit because they were actually going to kill him. But then they decided, well, we'll just sell him off into slavery instead and make some money off of him. So they did that. He ends up going into slavery in Egypt. It goes well for a while, but then he ends up getting wrongly accused of something and getting thrown in prison. And then he ends up spending years in prison. So altogether, all this spans about a decade of his life. So they made his whole life go totally from going great. He was a favorite child in his dad's household to being enslaved and imprisoned. But God made it right. He turned all that the enemy meant for evil, and he used it for good. And as I was pondering on that whole story right now, I was thinking how it was amazing that he went from all of that, from the pit to the enslavement to the prison to the palace. That was a miraculous thing. But then God reminded me that it was even more miraculous that he went into the palace not angry, not bitter, not vengeful, that he dealt with those hurts, with that pain, with that wrong, and he left it up to God to make it right. And we see that when he actually does meet his brothers when they come into Egypt to get grain, because there's a famine in the land, and because God gave Joseph wisdom, he was able to save thousands of people, nations of people, because of it. So when his brothers came to him, they didn't, of course, know who he was, and he ends up giving them grace. He had every right to throw them in prison or worse, but he ends up giving them grace and love and redemption. And he says the words that I love so much, like, yes, you meant it for harm. You meant it for evil, but God, he meant it for good and for the saving of many people. So friend, I just wanted to pass that on. If you, like me, can sometimes walk through some stuff, and it's so hard when people hurt us and they do us wrong, and we want to take it into our own hands, and we want to see that they get their, just reward in a way. But God, he wants us to make it right in our heart. He wants us to be healed from that, so that when we do get to that place that he is bringing us from all that darkness, all that pain, that when we do step up and become everything that he's always destined for us to be, that we won't have that hurt and that pain and that anger festering in our heart, that he will make it right in our heart. And part of that is letting go of what we think he should do to handle that. And it is offering that forgiveness and that redemption, even though it's hard. And no, it doesn't always mean there can be reconciliation, but it's a choosing to lay down our idea of punishment and just desserts and rewards and all this stuff. Saying, okay, God, they did me wrong, but I'm going to believe that you and your greatness, you can make it right, that you can turn every single thing that the enemy meant for evil, for my good and your glory, God. Friend, I am praying that for us both today, that he will give us the strength to lay it down at his feet and to be able to just let go of all that anger, all that bitterness, all that pain, all that sorrow, all the things that just sometimes can fester in our hearts and keep us up at night. And we can just take a breath and give it all to God, so that we can walk out this beautiful plan he has for us, our life one step at a time. And so when that day comes, that he does bring us forth, that we will be fully ready, and we will have a heart that is passionate for him, not for vengeance, not for retribution, not revenge, because it does say that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, right? So let's lay all that down, and let's trust that whatever way he chooses to see fit to make it right, that we're going to say, God, not my will, but your will be done. I'm praying for you, friend, because I know how hard and tough this one is. I love you.